Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Rosie here. Sorry, lads. Sorry. I know. I say this like every time I make a video now. I do apologize, lads, for the hiatus. And I promise we will return to shitty Dead by Daylight at some point. Yes, I know. But, this is what I'm feeling right now. I had the urge to make this a couple days ago. And this is what I want to talk about. So that's what we're talking about. I have never hid the fact from everybody that I am an atheist. And the last video was actually probably only the second time I've really gotten into a big atheist rant on the channel. The Charlie Kirk video was the only time I got into a big atheistic rant. The other time was so long ago, and it wasn't even really a rant. It was just in a video where I was kind of talking about it. But again, I haven't seen that in such a long time. Maybe there's times I'm forgetting, but I only remember two, or at the very most three. I think I remember one time I was drunk and talking about cosmicism. So we'll kind of lump that in there. Only three. But I've usually only talked about my atheism when it's relevant to what we're talking about, usually about a horror movie. Usually as a prelude to, like, I'm an atheist, I don't buy this shit. But this is the video I have the urge to make, and so this is the video where I am going to give you guys the scoop, combined with a modern reflection of kind of where we exist now in our modern day. I want this to be a kind of a retrospective, kind of personal experience, because it is my story, combined with a retrospective on kind of the movement as a whole, particularly my relationship with it today, as well as back then. So, it's kind of a personal reflection as well as a retrospective. That's kind of what we're doing here. I have a very brief outline, but you know me, I like to ramble, and I get into side topics and side tangents, so we will see where it takes us as we go along here. But I got the urge to make this. Probably the roots to getting the urge to make this actually go back to last year. Not to make this video, but like the reflections that we're going to be talking about. A lot of this really got started last year, and it was only when it started to come up again and again and again that I feel like I want to have some kind of reflection on this, either in writing or a YouTube video on it. And writing like a nonfiction book is something I don't know much about. It's a lot harder than just writing words on a page. And so, like, maybe one day I would like to write a book on this movement as a whole, but that would be a massive project that would get in the way of all my fiction. So that is kind of where we are with that. But so I figured the YouTube video would probably be easier, less time consuming, and it would give you guys something to let you know I'm still alive. So it have a lot of positives and shit. And plus, I'm sure somebody out there has missed my voice on shit. So I guess we should kind of start off with kind of where we were, because this is kind of also kind of like a sequel video to the Charlie Kirk video in a way with the atheist shit. Because the last time was more ranty. This one is definitely going to be much more kind of just talking and having like a conversation with myself. I'm not going to sit here and present the arguments for atheism. I'm not going to do that to you. If that's something y'all are interested in and you want me to talk about the arguments for atheism in more depth and more detail and why I subscribe to them, that's something I will consider doing, and we can have that conversation and shit. But this is kind of a reflection on the actual movement itself. So I will talk about some of their arguments where it comes up and is relevant, but this is mostly just going to be my narrative combined with the retrospective. So some arguments will show up, but all in all, I'm not going to go into everything the men say here, because again, that's not really the point of this. But it will come up where it's applicable, but this is obviously a very basic overview of what these men and some of their associates bring to the table. Capiche? So, what really inspired me to make this is, as I've been kind of having my own personal retrospective, I've been seeing a lot of YouTube video essays about this movement that have dated back within the past year. So, it's almost been 20 years since it's gotten really big. So and I anticipate there will be more following the 20th anniversary of 2007, which is, I believe, the biggest year of this movement. So, and I expect to see more in 2031, which will be the 20-year death of Hitchens. So I'm sure a lot of it will come up. So I foresee retrospectives on this movement becoming a bit more frequent as we proceed in the coming years. So I would just like to give my own before they start really piling on. Again, there's already been a few, but I wanted to give mine now, kind of to kind of at least beat the curve. So I will make no. I've already said I was an atheist, and I will not beat around the bush when I say that I love these guys. The four horsemen of atheism, new atheism. I'm not going to lie to anybody and throw my dog in the fight. I still very much identify with these men and their philosophy and the movement of new atheism as a whole. I don't think that has, because you can't say they're wrong when you listen to them. So, I mean, there's aspects of it that, like, I'm going to talk about how my opinion has changed, but overall, my dog in the fight is that I still very much subscribe to this notion. After all, like, when I think about these guys, all I can think about it is that it is the movement that changed my life. My life has been changed twice, in two very different ways. We will talk about the second as well, but the very first way that my life was changed was because of the four gentlemen you're seeing on the screen. Also, shout outs to Lawrence Krauss, Bill Maher, and Ricky Gervais, off the top of my head. Those 7 men, instrumental in helping me through what I still regard as the worst time of my life, which is high school. Dealing with the Catholic school system is not something I wish on anybody. I always campaign for my little brother to never attend a Catholic school and never have to go through what I went through. It was very bad. It was very bad. And again, it wasn't like, I'm not going to say it was nothing like so bad happened to where I was like nothing like the altar boy shit or anything like that. But it was mentally taxing, mentally exhausting, and the psychological damage that was inflicted on me during those 5 years of my life, because I went to high school for 5 years. My eighth grade was actually in a high school. I did not have a middle school. I jumped from 6th to 8th grade, and my 8th grade year was in a high school. So I spent 5 years in a Catholic high school system. And the mental affliction garnered in not even all 5 years, because everything really started when I was a sophomore. So the mental affliction created by those 3 years, even 2.5 if you want to be a major dick, is something that still sticks with me very much to this day. The mental isolation, the mental fatigue, the loneliness, feeling like a fucking outcast and a fucking monster. Like, back then, it's just, I'll never forget dealing with those feelings. And again, that kind of shit sticks with me and still does bother me and affect me to this day. I am still very bitter about those 2.5 years. And you know what? It's okay to be fucking bitter about shit. I think bitterness can make you better as a person if you harness it and use it correctly. If you're just bitter for the sake of being bitter and you're not doing anything with it, that's one thing. But, you know, I'm using I'm part of what I do is I'm turning my bitterness into art. And I think that is, it's not just something I'm letting destroy my life, and I'm not letting it consume me to the point where I am not a functioning member of society. I am using the bitterness I feel towards those 2.5 years to shape my entire fictional world in a lot of ways. So that is that. But again, that's the very abridged version. The less abridged version is, I remember the very first time I ever questioned religion at that Catholic school system, and it was very simple. Like, if somebody had just told me the truth, I don't even know where I am today. Well, not even told me the truth. I guess that's not the right way of phrasing it. If somebody had just satisfied that answer, let's just say that, and gave me satisfactory answers that I deemed acceptable, I don't know where we are today. but in a way, it's like, well, the truth isn't really a satisfactory answer for me in this case. So I can't even really reflect on like what could have saved me in quotes, by the way. But when we were passing, we went to mass every week at my Catholic school. Lots of them were like every month. Some of them were every week, but mine was every week. Some of them are every week. So, but mine was every week. And when you do this shit over and over again, you ask yourself shit. Now I didn't go to church on Sundays, like ever. My family is very. I went to Sunday school until but we never went to actual church. If that makes any sense. Like I think my parents wanted me to be exposed to it, but like it was never forced upon me in a way that it's been forced on other people. But I suppose so. Like it was a happy medium, I would say. So and I have come to respect my parents for that reason. My parents and I clashed a lot in high school, and certainly there was a harboring of negative emotions towards them because they would not let me leave that place for my final year like I wanted to. So there was some clashing there, and my parents, particularly my mother, did not take my coming out, for lack of a better term, to atheism that well when it happened. But it's not like it was something that like was going to permanently change the state of the relationship I have with my family, if that makes any sense. I think she was shocked and in the moment hurt because I think she felt like she messed up raising me, which I don't want her to feel like that, but like that's kind of what happened. But again, this is again side tangents. That's what I do. But again, the initial questioning was when we were all at church and they were passing around the fucking donation thing, and I'm sitting here going, they're passing around this fucking donation thing, multiple baskets for like many different quote unquote causes. They're passing around all this shit to high schoolers, bro. People that most of them they think are going to church twice a week because most of the people in the audience are Catholic. And I'm sure that thing gets passed around on Sundays too. How much do they expect to fucking get from a bunch of 14-year-old kids? Like, what? Like, what are we doing? And so, and then once you start that initial knocking knock the first domino over, you ask another one. Okay, so I'm like, that's the first thing I asked. And then my second question I asked was like, well, where does it go? Like, right? Like, I think I've told this story on the channel before. But it's like, where the hell is all that money going? Every single week we pay all this fucking money. And my friend was like, well, most of it goes directly into the church itself. And then I was even shown this diagram that they had actually in the pews. I don't remember if this was like right on that day or if it was like slightly later, but I remember seeing this diagram, like a pie chart of the actual proceeds and the percentages of like where it was all taken. And I believe it was something ridiculous, like 90 to 95% of it went directly to the church itself. 90 to 95%, some of it, like at least 90. And then 10% went to other various things with like maybe 2% going to charity and to the poor. And as I get older, like, okay, yeah, like, it's like, okay, they take most of it for themselves. Yeah, no shit, bro. No fucking shit. So, but like back then, that chart literally pissed me the fuck off. It literally irrationally pissed me off, I would say. Because it was like, and again, it still does make me mad today. They are taking too much in the face of their own ambitions, or at least what they say. Because we have this whole message about preaching about how we're going to feed the poor and help the sick and all this fucking happy horse shit, right? Only to then pocket directly 95% of the cash that we're putting in. What? You can't need that much to stay afloat. You're one of the richest organizations in the entire world. They don't pay taxes. All religion is still tax exempt to my knowledge, which is still a fucking ridiculous notion. That's still completely fucking ridiculous. Religion does influence politics, and all the churches should be taxed for that reason. 100%. But like, all that shit goes directly to the church, and I was just like, okay, that does not make any sense. And so that was the initial kicking the door open, if you will, where it was like, okay, we're doing that. Well, so we're not helping the poor. Isn't that a bit hypocritical with what it says in the fucking book? You know, so again, this was all sophomore year. That was my initial questioning phase. So I started asking more and more questions. And most of them were directly towards social. Like, I had a big problem with how the contraception and abortion. I had a big problem with that back in the day. And I think the abortion issue, as I get older, again, because as I've gotten older, abortion has become less important to me. And I think the answer is just very simple. I was having, like, when you're younger, the risk of a teen pregnancy is like a premature pregnancy can destroy someone's life in this country. That is an issue, and again, that has to do with the economy and too much money and being involved in that. But it's like, abortion's very appealing because, number one, it's appealing because if you do happen to fuck up and get a girl pregnant, there's a way out. Your life isn't completely ruined over it, you and her, right? That's like the appealing thing about it. And again, back then it's like it's a clump of cells, and you know what? It still is. The thing with the abortion debate is, I believe there's a line, and when that line is hit is different per fetus, if you will. That's why it's hard to come up with an exact terminology of when it is or isn't okay. And like, again, but this isn't the time for that. But that's just again, I didn't like the abortion stance because, again, when you're sexually curious and sexually promiscuous, you want to have sex. It's our biological urge, and having that in the back of your mind as a risk of doing it, that when you're younger, that's more important. It just is. It just is, bro. And yes, use a condom, but it's like, okay, but they hate that too. Why both? That was something I had a problem with. Like, if you're going to be so hard on the abortion, why are you also then hard on contraceptives? Like, why are both not okay? So if I want to have sex, which I'm not allowed to do anyway, I'm supposed to repress all my sexual urges. But all that's a sin to begin with. And again, the religion likes to control the private matters of your life, diet, sex, etc., etc. Like, what is it their business what I'm doing? What is it their business what I'm eating and on what day? And who I'm sleeping with, if I'm jerking off or not. Like, who gives a fuck, bro? Just fucking live, like, just who gives a shit? Keep it all private. You know, it doesn't matter. Now, again, I feel like the cultural revolution has taken it to the other extreme today, where now we're having fucking drag queens in the vicinity of children. Like, there is a middle ground, people. We don't have to, like, fucking shun the topic of sex, but we also don't need to have that. Like, it can go both ways. So it's just, mostly just the social issues on, like, why the church preached this. I was also very pro gay marriage. Again, I think I said this in the Charlie Kirk video, still am. It's just the other shit I kind of have a problem with, but the concept of them wanting to get married, I don't have a problem with. Marriage is more legal than religious these days. Like, they should be able to do that. It doesn't matter. Right? In this country, you can do whatever the fuck you want, provided you're not trampling on anybody else. And so, as I continue to question these social dynamics, I sort of coined this term for myself going into the junior year, where I was the anti-Catholic Catholic. I was still Catholic. I still knelt. I still took confession, much to the chagrin of some of my classmates, because they thought my soul was in a state of sin, and we're going to get to that in a minute as well. But they thought my soul was in, like, a state of sin, so it was like a sin for me to get communion, because of the fact that my soul was in a state of sin. So it was a sin to take the body of Christ into me, because I was in such a state of sin and questioning everything, right? But I would just lambaste the church. Like, I would be like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Again, mostly having to do with a lot of social shit that I really honestly can't remember. I brought up all the big ones, but I was so into this shit. Like, it was my obsession to just want to I was obsessed with reforming this to make it more accessible to a modern generation, so it wouldn't completely fall apart. Basically, I tried to do what Charlie Kirk was doing before he actually ended up doing it, but he didn't really do it in a way that compromised it, if you will. Like, the way I was doing it was actually going to try to compromise what they were saying, because I just didn't believe in it, if that makes sense. But like, anyway. So that phase of being the anti-Catholic Catholic lasted 1 year, where I was very aggressive. And then, and much to the chagrin of my friends, and again, one of the big story, again, something that also enraged me, was one of my friends came up to me and was like, he expressed concern for my immortal soul, which pissed me the fuck off. And it was honestly a huge step into I'm going forward with my atheism, because he expressed concern for this immortal soul, that in the concept of hell, which I still to this day have a massive problem with. It was a hard reason for me to actually break away from the concept of religion. But he said, I'm concerned for your immortal soul. You're going down a bad path, etc., etc. And I basically was like, I can't let you do it. And honestly, like, and that's what really changed my outlook on everything. And again, I don't remember exactly when this was, but my timeline has been lost to time, if you will. But reflection on that conversation really is what kind of set me off, because that's when I really asked the question: how do you prove there is an immortal soul to begin with? How can you prove the validity of that statement? What is it about the immortal soul that makes you so sure that it is even there to begin with? And so that was the very, very dangerous question that I believe I asked, because that's when it's like, okay, well, they can't prove this, and then it's like, okay, well, it's like the entire existence of God is something you can't really prove. You can't prove that. Like, there is no proof you can offer to actually prove it. Now, on the flip side, there's no claim I can make to you that falsifies it, because religion has this nasty, nasty habit of presenting arguments that are unfalsifiable. Making an argument that is unfalsifiable, ladies and gentlemen, is a very cheap trick that is not a sign of strength of a position. It is a sign of weakness of the position. Making an argument that is unfalsifiable shows insecurity in the position, and the fact that the person making the argument is so weak in will and they're dead set that there's no point in having any conversations with them about the subject matter, because they're too stuck up and ignorant to even consider changing. Like, for Darwinian evolution, for example, which I am a proponent of, if you find me an example of a fossil in a different rock layer than it's supposed to be, you have disproved evolution. That's all you have to do. Very simple. No one's ever done it, and no one's going to do it. Right? Science is a much more provable, testable, and studyable way to figure out and determine why we exist in this world. Not why, how we exist in this world. What led us to getting here. The study of the universe, etc., etc. And these people that make these theories, they lay them out, and they prove them with evidence and reasoning, and the presentation of facts and arguments, etc., etc. And they also at least imply what will debunk them and disprove them. And the intellectual battleground will happen, and like the debate of ideas for over ideas' own sake. No one's going to be offended if you disprove their idea about the world and scientifically and do it correctly. It's just like, okay, well, this is why that is, and it's okay. And then we move on to gather the next thing. That's why science advances and builds on itself. We may not care about everything Aristotle said, but the fact he got like one thing right back then is incredible, right? That's why it sticks around. But again, that's all here nor there. But basically, what I really couldn't break away from was the concept of hell, and the fact that if you die and go there, it's like eternal torment. It's a very fear-based thing, and a very wicked thing to be telling to children, especially that, honestly. That is a terrible, a wicked belief and a wicked preachment. It is probably the best friend of religion, and that is the reason it's still around. I honestly 100% believe that. because it was at least for me, it was the hardest thing to break away from. So I started dancing around my non-belief. I came in my senior year of high school for the first half of it, identifying as a Unitarian Universalist. Yeah, look that up. You never heard of that, have you? I haven't even looked at what that is in a long time. Basically, it was just like this religious group that you can like kind of believe whatever you want, almost. Like, but you still go to like this weird church thing, which I never went to because I didn't really drive. But that is what I identified as, and I remember vividly when I stopped kneeling at church. I stopped kneeling the first week of my senior year is when I stopped kneeling, and I got to really look at everybody around that was doing it, and it just looked very silly for that, and I was just like, holy fuck, is that what I've been doing this entire time? It looks ridiculous. It was almost like it was scary and funny at the same time. I remember feeling, because it was just like, God damn, what are these guys doing? And finally, after all of that, we get to the Christmas break. So, the Christmas break is when I discovered the Four Horsemen of Atheism. And that is finally, after that 26-minute prelude, brings us to the main topic of the video. The Four Horsemen of Atheism. And my experience with it, and the setting all that up, because I had to hear something. I had to just listen to somebody criticize the Catholic Church. I was not looking for an atheist. I found the Intelligence Squared debate between Christopher Hitchens and Stephen Fry versus Ann Widdecombe and some bishop that he's from Africa, so we had like an African name, but I don't remember it. That debate changed my fucking life, bro. Watching Christopher Hitchens was incredible. That 20 minutes that he stands up there at Intelligence Squared on why the Catholic Church is a force for good in the world, and he just absolutely dismantles the Catholic Church, which I really needed to hear. I needed to fucking hear that in that time, because I was still at this point going through those feelings, because I was kind of finding myself and getting my arguments together and kind of figuring out what I was, but it was still in a sense where it was not a socially acceptable place for me to be doing that at all. Now, there is one story which I'll back up and tell in a minute, but it was not really a socially acceptable place for me to do that. I lost friends, pretty much, over what the things I was saying and the questions I brought up, and the admittedly dickish way I was doing it. Because I was angry. I was angry, frustrated, and irritated. Constantly 24/7. I hated where I was, and nobody was helping me. Everybody was making it worse and compounding on me. So my only course of action was lashing out. I lashed out, and like, I have not lashed out as much since, and I have not lashed out before. That was an awful period of my life where I was angry every single day, 24/7. It wasn't who I am, and it never was, and it hasn't been since that time. Since the day I graduated, completely different person. That place just brought out the absolute worst in me. And I feel bad for my friends there, because I think they saw a side of me that wasn't accurate to who I really am in those final couple years. And and from what I understand, a lot of my friends don't harbor anything against me. And I think that's because they've grown up and they've kind of realized that school was a bad place. And that was my way of coping with the fact that it was a bad place. And I think my arguments, in some respects, have won a lot of them over in retrospect, because of the left-wing political influence in our culture. Because that's what it was. That's why I was spewing. Now, I was spewing a bunch of atheistic talking points. I wasn't really talking about the political left. One of my friends was actually said I was a big, huge contradiction because of the fact that I hated religion so much, but I also hated big government. So, and I still do. So it was like she couldn't really pinpoint where the hell I was on any spectrum, because of the fact that I hated big government as well. So I was a contradiction. I wasn't really on the left or the right of anything. The seeds for me, like not hating Donald Trump, have always been there, is what I'm saying. But moving on from that, actually, that again, Hitchens was enthralling. Is the actual main point I'm trying to get at here. he tore into the Catholic Church in a way that related to me, what I needed to hear, and the way that he did it was without mercy. He wasn't trying to be friendly. He wasn't trying to like tone himself down to cater to the audience. He was doing what I needed. If and that really changed my life, because as soon as I saw that in 20 minutes, I was like, he gave me such courage in the moment to instantly just renounce all of it. And again, he wasn't even really argumenting for atheism to my recollection. Admittedly, I've been rewatching a lot of the debates lately. I actually haven't gotten to that one yet, which is funny because it's one of the most important ones to me. You think I'd watch that first. But again, since that debate isn't really about the existence of God itself, and it's not even Hitchens' most famous work in terms of the debating, that would be his debate with Rabbi David Wolf, but which I have watched. But but the way he carried himself there, like, again, he gave me the courage to instantly, number one, laugh at it, which again he has stated in interviews before that the mockery of religion is the most essential thing to him, because the ability to laugh at authority is a very key part of breaking away from it. He could not be more right about that. The ability for me to laugh at the church was something I had not yet done up to that point. He brought a sincere wit to the table, made me laugh at the church, and then also with the amount of seriousness and scolding that he needed to do, where he force-shamed them for all their crimes all throughout history. And it was fantastic. He literally did like a huge timeline about all the way from the Crusades to the Inquisition, all the way to modern day things that I didn't even know about, like the Rwanda genocide. Like crazy fucking shit that he was able to do in that 20 minutes. And then, like, after I watched him, I didn't watch the whole thing. I just watched him. I paused it and I went, I'm an atheist. Like, that's what I am, because I was just basically, I just said, fuck it. I want to be that guy. I want to be that guy. I want to carry myself like him. I want to have a wit and presentation about me like him. I want to scold this shit and mock it with the razor precision that he just did. So he was life-changing, and I just started consuming everything with him in it. Everything. Everything I could get my hands on with him in it, I would find. And that, of course, led me to discovering the others. Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, and Daniel Dennett. I eventually discovered them all. Daniel Dennett, I admittedly don't know much about. I have not read his book. He's the only one I haven't read, because he didn't seem to do any of the big debates. He was more like, a little more low key. He did recently pass away, which did make me sad, because again, I don't not know about him. He had this idea that religion was like sort of something natural, I believe it was. His book was called Breaking the Spell, but religion was like some kind of natural thing. I think what his main argument was. But I honestly, again, that's why Lawrence Krauss I kind of credit more than Daniel Dennett, to be perfectly honest with you. Lawrence Krauss, to me, is like the fifth horseman. I think that's his nickname. Isn't that his nickname? Somebody tell me if that's his nickname. Lawrence Krauss I definitely credit as being the fifth horseman, because he is like, again, he had a wit about him too that I really remember. But Dawkins was the first time I heard Dawkins was he was actually with Christopher Hitchens, and I rewatched that debate today. Dawkins was a fucking asshole in that debate. Like, to be blunt, he was kind of a dick. Like, Hitchens is a dick too, but like Hitchens has this way of being like theatrical to the point where it's like he's being a dick and roasting you, but at the same time you can tell he's, for lack of a better word, a charming man, right? Dawkins was just straight up a dick. And I didn't see Dawkins as being an asshole when I was in high school, because I didn't think any of them were assholes in high school. I was like, these guys are who I need to hear. But Dawkins, he has some moments where it was like, man, this guy's a cocksucker. But again, in a good way. I mean, I like Richard Dawkins, don't get me wrong. He is great. I've read his book. I read a couple of his books. Christopher Hitchens, I've read a couple of his books as well. Sam Harris, I've read a couple of his books. Sam Harris is also great, but the thing about Sam Harris is a couple things. We're going to talk about Sam Harris a little later. But I will say that Sam Harris, while smart and the most polite of the Four Horsemen, he does have this way of like, he's a better fucking writer than he is an orator. Let's just say that. He's not a terrible orator, but like to say he has the charisma of Dawkins Hitchens or Daniel Dennett or Lawrence Krauss or Ricky Gervais is just not true. Like, he doesn't have that charisma. Sam Harris, if you're tired, we'll put you right to bed. Like, seriously, bro. His arguments are still good. Like, once you actually break them down and deconstruct them, they're actually good. But to say he has the showmanship of a Hitchens is just entirely incorrect. But again, so like I was really into this shit, and my friend, backing up a bit, I'll never forget this either. When we were on our senior retreat, I had a friend who pulled, like, he didn't pull me aside, but like I had a friend approach me and said, you know, because again, this is back when I was still really alone, and my friend was like, listen, I've been thinking about a lot of the stuff you've been saying, and it's actually kind of tearing me apart. Again, that's not verbatim, but like, I was basically being told that my friend was in agreement with the things I was saying upon further reflection. And that, like, I kind of was like a shark that smelled blood. We just started texting back and forth, and we got really close. So as soon as I found the Four Horsemen, I instantly sent my friend that the videos and shit, and we started watching them one at a time, and then literally Skype calling to talk about them. Like, that's literally what we fucking did over Christmas break. We did that the whole break. We would talk about all of them. We watched them all, bro. It was an obsession. All day, the entire break, it was watching these four men, and Lawrence Krauss, and Ricky Gervais, and George Carlin. I don't want to forget George Carlin. Every time I think I'm going to forget somebody, I gotta credit George Carlin as well. George Carlin's stand-up bits about religion, again, the ability to laugh at authority, again, hugely influential. I can't understate that. I feel like I am, no matter what, because this is the first time I mention him, and we're 37 minutes in. But George Carlin was also highly influential. The first atheistic video I ever watched was actually George Carlin. Because again, when I found Hitchens, I wasn't looking for atheism. I was looking for being against the Catholic Church. And I came around to atheism as a response to that. But basically, once I found those guys, I was absolutely enthralled, courageous, and my life completely changed. So I came in, I was, again, a very fucking, I was an insufferable little prick that last fucking time, but, that last fucking semester I was an insufferable little prick, but like, I stumped everybody because I was using arguments that were way above their heads, and it felt very good to do that. And so, and again, moving into college, basically those guys helped me establish my identity as I move forward in my life, and that is something I am forever grateful for, and I'll never forget the service that these four men did for me, ever. That's why I mourned when I found out the net was gone. I didn't actually know he died. I found out like a year later, but I was very upset. Even though I knew the least about him. Hitchens, I still mourn for, because again, we're going to talk more about Hitchens as well. But Hitchens being the closest thing I have to a savior. But then, you know, life goes on. You know what I'm talking about? Life goes on. And so as I found that new identity and established it, life goes on. And again, it was at the first time in my life where I really didn't have to think about this shit every day. I could just live my life. And you know what? That is the best thing about being an atheist. The fact that you don't have to really think about it a lot. You get to just live your life. You don't have to go to church. You don't have to reflect on it. You don't have to do anything. You just live your life to the fullest. And so college, again, when I talk about thinking about my college, it's a little blurry, because I was not really interested in the meaning of life and shit in college. Because in college, I was thinking about Smash Brothers, sex, and Dead by Daylight. Those are the only three things I really gave a shit about. Even my writing was neglected in college. And I think the reason for that, I've thought about why I neglected writing so much during my college time. And I think the reason for that is writing. I went back and recently reread some of my drafts from high school, and they're shit. That's the first thing. But two, if you actually ignore the fact that they're shit and actually like analyze them, they're very angry. Writing for me back then was more about coping with what I was dealing with every day. It was less about like my fiction and more about coping with my daily life. So when there was nothing to cope about anymore, I didn't really need it as much. If that makes any sense. I didn't not write. That's not what I'm saying. But it's like I never took it as seriously as I do now, because I didn't really find my voice as a writer quite yet. So I was just living life and experiencing it, if that makes any sense. Which is admittedly an important part of the writing process, but it's just looking back on it, I wish I had found my writing identity a little bit sooner. But anyway, that's not the point. So yeah, I was interested in sex, Smash, and Dead by Daylight. My life changed for the second time during my master's, and ironically, another atheist is who changed my life. When I was actually doing, this is something I shouldn't tell you, but I'm going to anyway. I was doing my brother's coursework for him in college. My brother was in college. This was around the COVID time. I was doing some of his work for him, because if I didn't do it, no one else is going to. If the family didn't help him out, he just wasn't gonna pass. So he had to pass so we could get his job. But so we were all helping him out. I took a horror class, and that is how I read H.P. Lovecraft for the first time. And H.P. Lovecraft absolutely changed my life. Like, he absolutely did. H.P. Lovecraft helped me find my writing voice, because he helped me put aspects of my own life that were already established by these four gentlemen into a way that allowed me to perfect my storytelling craft. If that made any sense. He gave me the seeds for my storytelling craft. And again, a lot of my work is getting published now, and I'm very happy about that. I have 4 pieces out on the market currently. They're short stories. I have a lot more coming next year, and I just finished the first draft of a novel, which I'm very proud of, and which will be available as soon as it gets published. But again, my novel is not done yet. It has a lot more work to do and more visions to go through. But the fact that I even got the first draft of a novel done in the span of like 6 months, I'm very proud with, and I owe it all to H.P. Lovecraft. Him being able to help me turn my atheism and my love of horror, he helped me. He was the final piece in the cog I needed to turn my everything I love and care about into a passion and a craft. He was the final piece I needed to basically help me insert the horror element that I needed. Because I was like, well, how do I write a horror story? I love horror, but how do I do it? How do I find the way to tell horror in a way that relates to me? And he's the one who helped me do that. I dedicated my life to cosmic horror, and I do identify as a cosmicist. I am very much a cosmicist. If you don't know what cosmicism is, it is H.P. Lovecraft's literary philosophy. It is a blend of atheism, nihilism, anti-humanism, and an admittedly slightly misanthropic view of the world. Lovecraft being that gateway and helping me focus and harness my passions and my strengths was what I needed. But basically, cosmicism is like that we don't matter. Humanity doesn't matter. And that's something that religions also do. And it's like what happens after we die? Nothing. And again, that's not an answer that satisfies people. What people can't break away from is this idea that we're important. They can't break away from that. This idea that human beings inherently matter to the universe is something that a lot of people can't comprehend, because to them, they do matter. And they can't comprehend the fact they don't. It doesn't make sense to them. The brain legitimately has problems processing it. Right? They can't process the fact they don't matter because it doesn't make sense. It does not compute. Even though every objective thing, when you actually study the evidence, is telling them that they don't matter and that they're worthless, they don't accept that because it's hard for people to accept that they're worthless, right? Do you think you're worthless? Probably not. But again, but basically, that's what cosmicism is. It's the fact that humanity doesn't have any. To summarize cosmicism in one sentence, is that humanity has no importance or significance to the greater cosmos. That's it in one sentence. That sentence is so inherently atheistic, misanthropic, and anti-humanist, is insane. And I identify with that statement. I think it is objectively correct. And now, again, Christopher Hitchens would not agree with that because he was a humanist at heart. He was a humanist at heart and believed there was a lot of beauty in the world. I don't know how he'd feel necessarily about saying we don't matter. I don't think I've ever heard him comment on that in a debate. He's made mean-spirited, misanthropic comments, but I don't think he was a misanthrope, if that makes any sense. Like, whenever he was downplaying human beings, he was downplaying human beings as a creation of an all-powerful deity, if that makes any sense. I don't think he was actually a misanthrope. I think he was a humanist at heart when you actually listen to his work and read his book. But basically, once you study cosmicism and you read H.P. Lovecraft, the thing that inevitably follows when you read H.P. Lovecraft is a renewed view of science, because H.P. Lovecraft loves science. And so, like, when you're like me, who's like a diehard Lovecraftian, it is a renewed interest in astronomy, biology, chemistry. Like, you get a renewed interest in that stuff because it's important to your work. You can't not talk about it, especially in our modern age. If you want to write modern cosmic horror, writing cosmic horror is harder today than it was back then, because we know more science back then. Before, we didn't know anything. Like, it was easy to say that there are cats from Saturn because we don't know anything about Saturn. But because we know about Saturn now, we know there's no cats on Saturn, H.P. Lovecraft. You can't just use that as the basis of a cosmic horror anymore, right? So, like, because you have to write cosmic horror is to write science. You have to know at least a little bit about science, enough to convince people you know a lot. That's what writing is. You have to know just enough to make people think you know a lot. Try writing a history. You have to know just enough about the time period to make it believable. But you don't want to bore everybody with, like, just an explanation of the time period itself, if that makes any sense. So, again, it's like a balance you, like, have to strike. But as you proceed with that, the study of science, you will inevitably get to the astronomy phase of your renewed scientific worldview. And let's just say Steve from Blue's Clues didn't teach you very much about the cosmos, even though he sang a song about the planets, correct? He didn't really sing, he didn't really sing about everything. But basically, trying to blend the horror elements of my work into the science element of my work, trying to combine this, I inevitably stumble across another section of videos that I highly recommend to you. And it is the videos about space and why people view it as scary. There are like six of these that I really recommend online. And I also, as a side project, recommend the thalassophobia one as well. They're like 30 to 40 minute videos discussing these various phobias. Astrophobia, thalassophobia, and shit like that. The fear of space, the fear of the ocean, shit like that. Being able to kind of comprehend the worldview of people that have these types of phobias. And I must say, I don't have astrophobia. I don't sit here every day and just fear space. I don't get triggered by space. Okay? Like, if that, I don't have these phobias where I get irrationally scared of this shit. However, what I will say those videos actually did do was trigger something else in me. Basically, I combine, because I didn't watch those videos back then, because they weren't on YouTube. I watched those videos as like a 27-year-old man, rather than a 15-year-old angry boy that all I wanted to do was disprove Catholicism. Needless to say, when 9 years pass, or whatever the fuck, things change in your life. And like things change. You evolve as a person as well. You're getting older. People you know are getting older. Everything, people start dying. Now, I've been very fortunate. I've only had 3 people die. But, my parents aren't getting any younger. I'm not getting any younger. My friends are all getting older and getting married. Like, life goes on. If that makes any sense. Basically, all these facts kind of compounded on me at the same time. Where it's like, how vast the universe actually is. When you talked about clusters, superclusters, galaxies, and there's like hundreds of thousands of galaxies in these superclusters and all this shit, it's too much for our teeny weeny little brains to comprehend. And I've talked about this on stream before. I don't recommend psychologically torturing yourself with this type of thought process too much. It is very cool to think on it and dwell on it in its surface level. It is. It's like, wow, it's so big. Do not jump into the rabbit hole of going beyond deeper and the implications of that. It will tear you up psychologically. It just will. Especially if you don't believe in God. It will tear you up. Because it's too much for you to comprehend. Basically what ended up happening was, as I'm getting older, death is getting closer. Death comes for everybody. And it's getting closer and closer and closer to me. I'm not old, but I'm not young either. 28. I'm almost hit 30. A lot of people would say I'm young. I am young. But, like, when I think about the passage of time this last decade and how fast it went, it just snapped my fingers and it was gone. It's already happening. The passage of time speeds up the older and older you get. And basically, I had my first existential crisis. Trying to comprehend the universe, the scale, the implications, the fact I'm getting older and I'm going to die. All this stuff kind of came at me at the same time. And I had my first existential crisis. And the thing about it was, existential crises are so subjective. And this is the thing about atheism. It's been so long and shit, right? This thing I love being an atheist. I am an atheist still. But this thing I love and still do was actually a contributing factor to causing me pain. Which was something which last year, that's the first time I can honestly say that about atheism. I've been an atheist for 10 years. And it took 10 years. It was at 10 years after my initial conversion. 10 years when I was 17. 10 years. It caused me pain for the first time in 10 years. And that was different for me. And I didn't know how to actually feel about that. Right? I didn't know how to basically feel about the fact that this thing that I love actually was causing me pain. And again, do not think this is, I must stress this. This isn't coming from a place of doubt. It's not coming from a place of, oh my God, maybe I was wrong. That's not what it is. I'm not feeling any sense of doubt towards my beliefs and my lack of a belief in a God. That's not what it is. The reason for the existential crisis and the reason for the increased reflection is, oh my God, it's been 10 years. I still think I'm right. I still haven't seen anything change in terms of the existence, the evidence for the belief in a creator or anything like that. And as I get older, it's much easier to say you're going to die when you're 15 than it is when you're 28. The fact that you will, because everybody has an innate fear of death, and as you grow up, that gets closer and closer and closer. And again, it's still far from me, provided no major accidents or terminal illnesses pop up, but it's still closer than it was 10 years ago, enough to make me think about it. It's much harder to kind of cope with that fact, if you will. But again, it's not. The reason for this increased reflection is not because I think I'm wrong. It's because I think I'm right, and I have another thing to process now when it comes to my personal beliefs as I grow up that wasn't really there before. When all it was back then was being angry and trying to just hate on the Catholic Church. If that makes any sense. So, in my crisis, what actually happened, in that crisis, combined with all that, I did the only thing that kind of made sense to me at the time. Why this was last year and kind of now as well, but mostly, like, I needed to hear my idols again. The only thing that made sense to me in the moment was to return to those people that helped me back then when I was having a struggle back then. I needed to return to them and help me and to hear what they had to say to help me get through what I am now, right? And again, I still love the new atheists and the new atheism, but there's been a lot of videos talking about the decline of new atheism, and I haven't watched them. I've watched like a very tiny snippet of one coming from an atheist still. There's a lot of theist ones that I don't even want to fucking give the time of day to. Not even going to lie. But so it's like, as somebody who it has gone through some shit and needed to hear these guys again, and combined with what I heard in the brief snippets I've watched of that video, it makes me like, why is there an increased idea that new atheism is dying? Like, what is it? Because it is not the fact that they're wrong. That's the thing, it's not. Because number one, I don't think they're wrong. And two, when you listen to their arguments, you can't discredit them. Now, it's like they're not falsifiable, but that's something we criticized earlier. But they're not falsifiable in the sense that they're talking about something that is, quote unquote, unfalsifiable. It's a whole fucking round and round circle of bullshit. And that's because religion claims it's unfalsifiable. A lot of their arguments are falsifiable in the fact that they're talking about science. But anyway, that's beside the point. While the best thing about atheism is the fact that you don't have to think about it, sometimes it's easier for people to have those thoughts done for them, and that's not something atheism lets you do. If that makes any sense. Everything in the Bible's so laid out that you can go to like a Bible study every week and have some fake charlatan tell you lies about what it means, pretty much. There's nothing like that for atheism. You have to do more of the thinking yourself. If that makes a lot of sense. From what that video I saw, basically, here's what the guy said. I think his name's Alex Connor. I think that's his name, Alex O'Connor. He said there's a meaning crisis in everyone's life right now. There's a huge meaning crisis in life right now for lots of people. And that's something, okay, yes, I agree with that statement. I've had my own existential crisis about the meaning of my own life. And he said when you watch those debates, the new atheists trash religion and say it's garbage, and then briefly say a worldview based on science is better, and then don't elaborate very much. And that is something that is true. They do go into a little bit more detail than I think they're being given credit for, but it can still feel like they're not going into a lot of details. And I think the reason for that is atheists need to find their own personal way to give their lives meaning, despite what we have accepted to be true about the world. We don't have anyone to tell us what that meaning is. Christopher Hitchens and Richard Dawkins can stand up there and tell you that a life of science is better than a life of religion, which I believe is still true, but it's like science and literature and all that, they can tell you that still, but the fact is that that's almost like it. I guess what I'm trying to say is that might not work for you. So then you're going to be left navigating a void of sorts. And those central figures are not as helpful. What the new atheists are not helpful at doing is helping you navigate your own life. And that's something, honestly, you can't ask them to do that. Because it's not their life, it's yours. So atheism requires a little bit more on the part of its believer than religion does in that sense. Because religion can just throw its meaning at your face and say this is what it is. Atheism, you have to make your own meaning. That's very easy to say, it's harder to do. Right? It's very easy to say that on paper, but for every atheist, that journey is different. I have found the meaning in my life through my work. And making sure I hone in on crafting my horror stories, creating my characters, creating my monsters, which are expressions about how I feel about the world. That's why I call them my babies. And really honing in and making that my purpose and function. So, in a way, I have been able to get by with a life based on science and literature. But it's science and literature I'm producing. Science, in quotes. It's literature I'm producing. That's what's helping me navigate everything. If that makes any sense. That's not going to be the same for everybody. And again, atheist central figures can't tell you what that is. Nor should they be expected to. But anyway. I also heard Alex O'Connor say that people are living as if there is no objective morality. I don't know where he's getting that from. Again, I think that's the guy's name. I don't know where the hell he's getting that from. Sam Harris wrote a whole book about this. It was called The Moral Landscape. I've read it. It's been 10 years since I've read it, admittedly. But I believe The Moral Landscape was literally about finding an objective morality based around science. Christopher Hitchens was almost a fucking preacher in the fact that he fucking... he commanded... He took that objective morality and just kind of shoved it in the religious person's face. Right? He kind of took objective morality at them. So, I don't know where he's getting that from. The new atheists definitely did believe in an objective morality. The last thing that I think has contributed to the quote-unquote downfall of new atheism, despite the fact that their arguments aren't wrong, is two things. Twofold. One, the downfall of the left and the rise of Donald Trump. I seriously, bro. The rise of Donald Trump changed everything in our culture. And that is why, even if you don't like Trump, you have to at least respect him. The man changed everything about our culture. Everything exploded when he fucking took over. When he burst onto the scene. He changed the entire culture. And the first impact of that, which again, it took a little bit, saying this first part here is more about 2024 and beyond. Donald Trump made the right wing cool again. The fucking religious people, you go watch the religious right wing nuts that the Four Horsemen debate. They're so not cool. They're so, they're worthless. They almost, there's not a single memorable one. William Lane Craig was memorable. He was pretty good, actually. He just knew his shit. He wasn't a cool guy, but he just knew his shit. Rabbi David Wolf was one I remember, but he was just more annoying. There weren't any cool guys that these people debated, right? Everybody there was one guy that Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens debated together at Intelligence Squared, who polled the audience and asked them if they kissed a photograph. Yeah, he asked the audience if they've ever kissed a photograph. The whole room laughed at him. They weren't cool back then, bro. The religious right were nuts. And you know what? They still are, in the sense that they're wrong and shit. But the right has objectively gotten cooler since these four men have been around. Ben Shapiro back in 2016 was actually cool before he became an Israeli psychopath. He was actually cool back then. Matt Walsh, I argue, is still cool now. Donald Trump is cool. J.D. Vance is cool. The right wing is just cool. Joe Rogan, even though I don't think he's actually right wing. Elon Musk, Tulsi Gabbard, Candace Owens, even though she fell off. Charlie Kirk. The right wing has just objectively gotten cooler and more counterculture than when these four were in town and really doing their thing. The right wing back then was terrible. It's man, it used to be that bad. My dream debate is Hitchens versus Shapiro. I would love to watch them debate. I watched Sam Harris debate Ben Shapiro on religion. Ben Shapiro kind of got his ass kicked. It was boring, but Ben Shapiro kind of got his ass kicked. When you watch Ben Shapiro talk to Sam Harris, at least about religion, because they debated again about the 2024 election, and Ben Shapiro kicked Sam Harris's ass in that one. When they debated religion, Sam Harris kicked his ass. Because again, as soon as Ben starts talking about religion, he's a nutcase, and I don't want to hear anything he has to say. But same thing with Matt. The same thing with most of the right-wingers. Again, because I hate religion. But basically the rise of Trump in our modern culture, making the right wing cool again in 2024, started with that assassination attempt, which was the most pathetic move in our modern history. The assassination attempt of Donald Trump was the stupidest thing that could have happened, because that literally transformed our culture. But anyway. But going back a little bit to like the 2016 era, when Trump was really starting to rise up, the new atheists movement kind of got, the argument that I read was they got eaten by SJW causes like racism and sexism. And it's, in one hand, it is true. Sam Harris has a massive case of Trump derangement syndrome. I think Dawkins did too for a little bit, but Sam Harris completely lost his fucking mind. Completely. They have gotten better. I think the 2024 election was a real wake-up call to Sam Harris and Dawkins and Lawrence Krauss, because now they are criticizing the transgender movement, which is something that I don't recall they actually did before. But they are really honing in on that transgender movement. Well, Sam Harris seems more interested in AI these days. Dawkins, I don't really know what he's up to right now. I'll have to go look it up, try to figure out what he's up to. I know he's a biologist and shit, but, or at least he was. Maybe he retired. But like a lot of the new atheist causes being fucking corrupted and by the SJW movement was very bad, especially in retrospect. Because again, when you can go watch Hitchens and Dawkins make an argument about gay marriage and women, and it's not cringe. It's not cringe and awful. Right? There was just something different about how things were in 2007 than they are now. Christopher Hitchens used the word retard in his debates. He wouldn't be allowed to do that today. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the word retard. Not retard, retard. To slow something down. He used that word. If he used that word today, he'd be canceled. And this is another reason I think the movement kind of faltered. I'm sorry, I've heard nobody else say this about the movement, but I also haven't looked into it that much. But here's my belief. The death of Hitchens was a catastrophe. The death of Hitchens was a catastrophe that guaranteed the movement's borrowed time. Because Hitchens, in my opinion, some people might say Dawkins was the leader. Dawkins, I love Dawkins. Dawkins is a charismatic man. He doesn't have half the charisma Hitchens did. I'm sorry. Hitchens, when he's on the stage, can't take your eyes off the man. Enthralling. Reading his book is unlike reading any other book in the entire world. The man simply doesn't care. The man's wit his voice screams off the page. You can tell he wrote it 100%. He also has an audiobook version of himself reading it, and it's incredible. His book, God is Not Great, How Religion Poisons Everything, is wonderful. It's my favorite book of all time. He was the leader of the movement. The fact that he passed away in 2011 means that he's not here to comment on our modern affairs. We will never know Hitchens' place in our modern time, which is a huge problem for this movement. Why? Because its leading voice isn't there. Sam Harris got Trump derangement syndrome. I think Dawkins did too for a little bit. Even if Dawkins doesn't have Trump derangement syndrome, I know he doesn't like it. And it's very easy, and I'm in a lot of atheist pages on social media, it is very easy to say Christopher Hitchens would hate Donald Trump. It is very easy to say that. And again, do I think Christopher Hitchens would be a Trump guy? No, I absolutely don't. And would Christopher Hitchens dislike Trump? Yes. 100%. Christopher Hitchens would not like Donald Trump. But here's the thing. Christopher Hitchens also hated the Clintons. The 2016 election covered by Christopher Hitchens would be a fever dream. He hates the Clintons, and he would have also hated Trump. So that's one thing. Number two, as I stated before, Christopher Hitchens in our modern culture doesn't work. The man would be canceled instantly. Go listen to anything he says, bro. The man would be canceled instantly. And he's also not afraid to fight with the left. He supported the Iraq War. He supported the Iraq War when the left did not. He got into fights with his own political party over the Iraq War. To say that Christopher Hitchens would support cancel culture is honestly, I can't agree with you. Christopher Hitchens would hate cancel culture at best and be a target of it at worst. I think Hitchens would fall out with the left. I really do. over cancel culture. Especially now that Dawkins and Sam Harris seem to be pulling back their huge left-wing viewpoints, specifically on transgenders. I think there's enough evidence to predict that if Hitchens was still alive, he would have fell out with the left probably around 2019, 2020. To maybe a little bit later to account for COVID slowing the world down. So, but like 2022, the state of the modern Democratic Party, I think, would piss Hitchens the hell off. And he would be like a Bill Maher-esque liberal. That's the guy I keep hearing. Bill Maher. Again, credit to him. Speaking of Bill Maher, another thing that I remember vividly was when Sam Harris and Bill Maher were getting harassed by Ben Affleck on Maher's show because they were criticizing Islam. I don't know why the left defends Islam so much. I don't. I absolutely don't. Islam is the most dangerous religion in our modern time, and the left needs to separate themselves with defending it. It's ridiculous. It's making the right's job much easier by giving a pass to everything that religion does. Trash. And so, again, after all that is, again, that's kind of where I am. And to kind of, again, summarize this here, that is everything why the movement has essentially declined. It was kind of eaten by major left-wing talking points, and Trump's rise changed everything. To the point where we're like getting this wave of like apparent new theism. I need to kind of look into it because I don't know much about it. But like, I don't think it'll be like that forever. I think because Trump is now in power, this new theism movement will be countered by a new atheist movement, new atheist movement eventually. But I don't know what that's gonna look like. And we'll see about everything, lads. But, like, this little exercise has been, like, a fever dream for me to kind of go over all this shit again. But, honestly, again, it doesn't, just believe what you want, but keep it out of our face. I think a lot of the reason why the new atheists were so angry is because it was being shoved in our faces back then, in a way that I think this movement has permanently stopped. At least from my experience. It's much more... I mean, I haven't heard people talk about it as much lately, but I could just be separating myself from it. But... but again, that's about it, lads. These men were life-changing for me. And if you aren't familiar with their work, I at least would, like, watch their debates on YouTube. You don't have to buy their books and shit, because that's like a bigger commitment if you're interested in what you're seeing. But I would at least like get familiar with some of their arguments and listen to their stuff. It is very enthralling and will make you at least think about the world. But again, I think that's all I have to say, lads. I'm getting the hell out of here. GG's.